factory, they had a very small turbocharger, no intercooler, so when the turbo gets hot... Hey, this is Mad Matt from Budget Boostin'. Today we're going to talk about turbo kits and how to set up your own turbo kit, because you go looking on different websites and different businesses. If you are not the do-it-yourselfer type, you can pay somebody to put a real expensive turbocharger kit on your car, and they can be very pricey. I mean, I've seen just kits for sale for around $5,000 to about $18,000. You know, the price varies, and there's shops you can go to that'll charge you, bring your car in and they'll give you a turnkey twin turbo or turbo kit put on your car for 30 grand. But if you're like us, you like to do things on a budget, do it yourself, know a little basics about turbochargers and how to set them up, and pick your own components to do so. So that's the route what we're going to take. We're going to set up our own turbo kits, and you can go to different sources and find full out turbo kits, but probably a little bit more than you want to spend if you're on a budget. Like I could show you a couple examples of turbo kits for sale. You get like different kinds of turbo kits, like you got G-Ready, you can get G-Ready kits. You can go to Banks Power, get turbo kits. They're all great turbo kits, But if you know some basics on turbocharging, you can go find your own kits. You get a turbo at one website, you get an intercooler on another, you get your oil kit, your manifolds. You can just price it all in different places and save a lot of money by, shopping around. And with the knowledge, just basic knowledge on turbocharging, you can pick up your own components, make a turbo kit, make a car that screams. That's what we're going to do. Now, for example, just for sake of argument, let's talk about the small block Chevy. They're common, they're everywhere. People twin turbocharge small block Chevys all the time. You can go to some places and they'll do a turnkey small block Chevrolet, build the engine for you, do everything for you for about 30 grand. Hey, not a bad deal if you got the money and you're willing to spend the money. But if you want to learn how to set up your own turbo kit, do it yourself. Look around, find your turbo exhaust manifolds, your turbo headers, find your oil inline and return lines, find your intercoolers, and your turbochargers. Custom pick what you like. Now, my preference is V-band flanges on turbocharging, because you can pick out turbochargers, and you've got turbochargers with bolt-on flanges, and you've got turbochargers with V-band flange. Like here we got this turbocharger. This is one with the V-band flange. You can see it just has a clamp, which is held on by one nut, and that holds your whole exhaust to your turbocharger turbine outlet. So that's a lot easier than taking off all these rusted bolts, that could be all heat welded on. And then you have to put all that penetration stuff on there, the liquid wrench, trying to get all those bolts loose when you want to take your turbocharger off or remove your exhaust. But a V-band flange just makes it so easy. You just put on a clamp, put it on the back of the turbo, and hang your exhaust right there. Nice and easy. So I prefer V-band flanges when I look for turbochargers. And you can find them all day long on eBay, just all the different sellers out there. You can find a nice TO4E with a V-band flange, a nice good turbocharger to start with if you want to go twins or single. It's a good turbo, about 300 horsepower per turbo, very good. And you can find those for under $200. You see them for 160s, 180s, 200s. There's so many variations out there. Just make sure it meets your needs. Like a couple things I'll talk about. Internal and external wastegates. Like this turbo here that we're looking at has an external wastegate, or internal wastegate. It's got the little vacuum thing right there and a little actuator right by the turbo's housing. That opens a little gateway to allow excess exhaust out of the turbocharger. Whatever isn't being used to spool the turbo, you get your boost setting just right. The rest of the exhaust goes out the wastegate exit. So it allows extra exhaust to go out the turbo that you're not using to spool. And then you got your external wastegates, which are right here. Now see, you got this external wastegate right here. It's actually bolted to the turbo header right before the turbo flange. So here's your exhaust feeding your turbo. Once your turbo has plenty of exhaust to reach the boost that you've set your controller at, the rest of the exhaust gets bypassed right out the wastegate. So basically you have just enough exhaust gases to spool your turbo, and the rest goes out the wastegate. That's what you want. And an external wastegate, in my opinion, is easier to control. It's a better setup, and it's faster responding than like your internal wastegates. Internal wastegates are space saving. You can fit them in tight quarters, and a lot of the factory turbocharged cars use internal wastegates just because they're simple. They're simple to install, but an external wastegate is far more accurate and easier to control, and just a better setup. It's more reliable, plus it's adjustable. You can adjust your wastegate. You can also vary the wastegate's pressure by using different size and compression springs to determine when the wastegate opens at what boost setting, depending on how stiff your wastegate spring is. So there's lots of things you can do with an external wastegate that you don't do with an internal. Alright, another thing we're going to talk about too is when you're picking out your turbo for your turbo kit, a lot of variations on turbochargers out there. You've got different size compressors and different size turbines. The turbine section of the turbocharger is where the exhaust gas goes in the turbo and spools it. Now think of a turbocharger section as a nozzle. An AR is how they rate the size of a turbocharger exhaust or area, AR. And think of that as a nozzle effect. Like you've got an exhaust trim of 48 AR. Think of a lower number like 48, a tighter nozzle entry to where it takes less exhaust gas to spool that turbo faster. And say you got an exhaust AR of 60, it's a little bit bigger space, so it requires more exhaust energy to spin that turbo. So basically if you have a really big engine, like say a big giant high displacement V8, then you'd want larger turbine ARs, because you really don't need the small ones because you're producing so much exhaust gas to spool the turbo. So on your smaller engines like your 2 liters and your 3 liter straight sixes and stuff like that, you want to go with a smaller exhaust trim AR. Like a 48 would be perfect. A .48 AR would be great because it has good area. It doesn't take a whole lot of exhaust pressure and volume to spin that turbo up fast and have a really good turbo response. And then we'll talk about our compressor trim AR, where you want a much larger compressor than on the turbine side, especially if you have a small engine. You want a smaller, like say a 48 AR. That would be a very great turbo size for your AR because you have a smaller engine so you can spool the turbo fast, and a larger compressor, let's say a 65 or say a 66 or a 70, a larger compressor which is a bigger area which will flow more air along with the pressure. So it's great to get, high PSIs of boost, but you want a volume of that boosted air too, because you get some tiny little turbo boosting out 20 pounds and you're really not going to get a whole heck of a lot of performance versus a larger compressor turbocharger where you're getting a huge volume of air along with that pressure. So you're going to get a lot of pressurized boosted air in that engine. Plenty for it to ingest. And you want plenty so it raises that compression of that engine and gives you that performance you're looking for. But depending on your engine size, there's all kinds of formulas out there you can see on, you start Google searching turbo AR and what's good for a 3 liter engine, 4 liter engine, 5 liter engine, 7 liter engine. There's different compressor trims for your turbine and compressor that's recommended for larger engines. But for my personal opinion, I like a much larger compressor AR, a much bigger compressor, and a little bit smaller of a turbocharger so I can get my turbos to spool up fast and a lot of high volume pressurized air going in my engine. That's what I like. So, it all depends on what you're looking for. I'm talking about high power on a low budget. Lots of boost. So, that's what I like. Alright, well, this is Mad Matt, Budget Boosting. Thanks for watching our, turbo shopping. Shopping for your own turbo kit. Save yourself a lot of money and learn about what you're doing. It's always good to know exactly what you're doing with your car. It's great. So hey, if you like the videos you're watching, like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, all that good stuff. Because after all, Knowledge is power. It's horsepower.